Hi everyone, happy Tuesday. Welcome to the New Normal Challenge workshop. Today's focus is going to be on marketing and making sure you have awesome applications ready to go to meet our challenge deadline of this Saturday at midnight, August 15th. My name is Blake Sims St. Louis. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm the program director for social innovation with Innovate BU. And we are so excited to have you join us today for our workshop. I'm going to be pulling up some slides to share with you. And I also just want you to know that this presentation and the slides that we're going to show you will both be available and shared with you after today's event. You'll be receiving a follow-up email as well as these will be posted on our website. So if you've missed any of our past workshops and want to see what was covered in those recordings and those presentations are also all available on our website. So you should be able to see my screen. If you'd like to see it in full mode, feel free to click on the little arrows in the upper right-hand corner and it will expand your screen. Again, the New Normal Challenge is a challenge for students to develop ideas that will help your peers transition back to school, whether in person or virtually this fall. It's hard to believe that August is already midway through and people are starting to relocate back to Boston. So hopefully they're doing that in a safe and healthy way. We kicked off the challenge on July 28th. And again, the deadline for submissions will be August 15th. All of this information is available on our website, which you can see on the screen. If this is your first time on Remo, welcome. This is a really fun and interactive platform, and I just want to give you a quick lay of the land. So right now you're at a networking table, and that's where you'll be spending the bulk of the event. But we also have music or a video available in the top of your screen, and you can just drag and move your screen once the presentation mode is done in order to experience all these features. I'm on the stage right now. There's also an agenda right to the right of the stage. I often hang out at the Innovate BU info table, so if you have questions, we've got some sponsor tables along the perimeter. Your controls are along the bottom, so you should be able to access the chat box as well as the Q&A during presentation mode. So feel free to put questions in either of those locations, and we'll do our best to answer them. If you have any tech issues or need tech support, use the question mark, the Remo help bot in the bottom left-hand corner to connect directly with a Remo rep. And today we're only a one-floor event, so you don't need to worry about shifting floors, but if we were, it's kind of an elevator-like series of buttons on the left-hand side. Today's agenda, we're going to do a quick welcome and overview where we're also going to introduce you to our student panelists today. We've got a moderated Q&A with our student speakers to talk more about successfully completing applications and marketing our ideas. And then we're going to have some time for breakouts and networking and for you to get questions answered in a smaller setting back at the tables before we wrap up and make sure we answer all of the questions you have. The New Normal Challenge is something that's being done in partnership with a number of groups across campus. So we've got representatives today from the BU Student Government Group. Kat, who you'll meet momentarily, is here from BU Student Gov. We've also been working with the Dean of Students office on this and BU UMOJA. We couldn't have done this challenge without all of these partners. The BU New Normal Challenge is an opportunity for students to be heard and included in this process of transitioning back to campus. We are looking for the best ideas that help foster community, connectivity, and well-being. And we'd love for you to re-envision what life on campus, off campus, and virtually will look like. Through this work, we know you're going to be developing innovation skills and an entrepreneurial mindset, which is the mission of Innovate BU. The challenge has two tracks. The first track is known as the CRC, or the Charles River Campus Ideas track. In this track, you're submitting a recommendation that the Dean of Students or others at the university could implement. This track is open to undergraduate students, and all submissions will be reviewed by the Dean of Students office. The other track, the student impact track, are for ideas that you as students want to design, develop, and implement this fall. This track is open to all current BU students. We will be having a panel of BU faculty, staff, and student leaders review your submissions, and up to 10 ideas will receive $500 in seed grant funding to move those ideas forward. Whichever track you're thinking about submitting ideas to, know that the deadline is this Saturday, August 15th at midnight. And all ideas must adhere to federal, state, and BU health and safety guidelines and should really focus on the student experience. We've created about a dozen categories that will help us organize the ideas you're submitting. And there are a couple of ineligible topics, including COVID testing adherence, the Learn from Anywhere platform, and the housing and move-in procedures. Before I introduce our panelists, I'd like to take a minute to help you update your profile. These directions are also available in the event guide that's linked in the chat box. So if I go through this too quick, you can always go back and update this once the presentation is done. These events are all about networking and helping you connect with other people. We'd love for you to work on an idea with a diverse team, and this is a great way to connect with some of those folks. And the fastest way to connect with people is by checking out their profiles. So if you go to your icon in the upper right-hand corner and click on it, you should be able to see My Profile and Edit Profile. First thing we'd like you to do is add your pronouns to your name. Then where it says Headline, we'd like for you to choose and indicate the category you're most interested in. So we've listed all of them here. So if you really want to talk about traditions and celebrations, put that there, or health and wellness, whatever is most interesting to you. For the company, if you're working on an idea already, go ahead and put a very short description of what that idea is. Or if you're looking for a team member, type, I'm looking for a team. And then lastly, we're going to ask that you change job title to your school and year, and make sure you save changes. This way, when we go back into the networking mode, you can hover over other people's avatars and quickly see their profiles. And that might help you determine if this is a good table for you to spend time at, because there are people who want to talk about ideas like you, or if you should go and find some other folks that are interested. You can also, next to the chat box is the participants. You should be able to scroll through there and kind of see what people's profiles are like through that feature as well. Okay, at this time, I'm going to invite my fabulous intern, Libby, to the stage with me. She's going to be moderating the rest of the panel workshop today. And Libby, I'm going to have you do your introduction and then take it on over.
All right. Hi, my name is Libby McClelland. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a sophomore in the College of Arts and Sciences studying biology, and I am the Innovate BU program intern right now, as well as the summer ambassador. So if you can, today we are going to be having a student panel with a couple of very special students. If you, Blake, you want to switch to the next slide? One more. All right, so these are our panelists, and actually Blake will be joining us for our panel today. But if Danielle and Kat want to go ahead and turn their camera and microphone on, you can go ahead now, and I will have them introduce themselves, starting with Danielle. Can you quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Danielle. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am a senior studying public relations in the College of Communication, and I'm currently in Los Angeles, California.
Hi everybody, my name is Kat Ungvari. I am a rising junior in the College of Communications studying advertising. I'm currently in Cape May, New Jersey, but I'm from Bronxville, New York, and I am the Director of Recruitment for Boston University Student Government.
Great, and then we all know Blake. So yeah, can you go to the next slide? Sorry, unfortunately, because I don't have two monitors, I have to have Blake do the slides while I don't have control over that. But anyways, so I'm not sure how many of you have actually gone through to see the application questions yet, but we decided that we're going to be going through and seeing how our panelists would go about answering these questions, because we've gotten some confusion, I think, on some of the questions. So we thought it best to actually go through them. So Danielle, do you want to go ahead and take the first question? Provide a compelling description of the idea and how is this idea unique and novel?
Yeah, sure. I think the biggest thing people probably get stumped on is when they see description, they're just like, I have to include everything that this is or wants to be or X, Y, and Z. But like, I think the best place to start is just, first of all, don't get overwhelmed. But the first place to start is the problem. Just really explain the problem well and why you or your project is the solution. I think if you just start there and keep it short, succinct, and simple, I think that's probably just the golden thing. It's just that's especially in terms of innovation and the entrepreneurship mindset, just really understanding your problem and demonstrating that you know the problem well and you have the solution is super, super important.
Yeah, great. And Kat, how would you actually go about and describe this problem for the second question? And if you want to, in context of student government, kind of give how you would answer this question.
Yeah, sure. So something that I've noticed with my role so far, my one big goal within student government on recruitment would be to creating, the problem that I saw was student government itself does not exactly show a equal representation of what the student body looks like versus student government. So that was a problem I saw. And in addressing it, it would be really important to say that like the reason why this needs to be addressed and solved is because if students have issues, they will need to go to people who are on student government or people who have connections to other people. So if there's those representations, not only in different colleges, but different parts of campus, different types of communities, in all different senses, I think that that's really important to address. And I would be sure to say that, not just saying, oh, I think that it's important that we have a diverse student government. It doesn't exactly say why that's a problem. So like really getting to the why and like the questions further about that.
Yeah, great. And then Danielle, what has your team done to ensure that this idea is desirable, people need it, and equitable, that it's fair and inclusive? How would you respond to this question?
Cool. That's actually a really great question. I am part of a venture at the innovation pathway at the Build Lab. And again, I always say start with the problem too, but another important part is to make sure it's desirable. And by that, I mean, know your audience. Who has this problem and how can you help that audience? I think when I started my venture, we are doing a social platform. I think my co-founder and I were in this bubble essentially. We're just like, you have that problem, I have that problem too. And we asked our friends and we're like, oh yeah, this is a problem, right? But it was so limited just to our social sphere that we need to do something broader. We had to do a lot more research, more robust research and intense research to find out, like, is this just like a generational problem? Is this just a BU problem or is it something much bigger? And researching how to tackle like who our audience was helped us understand not only the problem a little bit better, but helped us tailor our solution and made us realize, oh, this is a desirable product because X, Y, and Z, because we've interviewed 100 undergraduates at BU, or we interviewed like 1,000 people like from this age range all across like the United States. And I think another point of that, in addition to being desirable, being equitable, the idea of just making sure it's fair and inclusive is to just, I really can't stress how important it is to know your audience. And my team for my venture, we have 8 people from all different socioeconomic backgrounds, racial, religious backgrounds. And I think it's just important to like, even like political backgrounds. I know when you're dealing with social platform, especially in this day and age, it's hard to like not make it political. But I think just to circle back to like why it's important to be fair is that we try super hard to do both perspectives. We always have to play devil's advocate with each other. We always have to bounce off each other. And there's like 8 minds. So yes, we could come up with an idea, but again, it goes back to research and testing that idea to make sure it is fair and applicable to everyone in our audience.
Yeah, great. And then Kat, what do you think the value of your idea, well, student government is, and to whom exactly? And how did you kind of figure that out, what demographic you were targeting?
Yeah, going off Danielle, definitely knowing your audience is so important. That is something you learn in comm. They really hammer it down to you. Like, you don't want to be communicating to the wrong people or not having an audience. Because if you just say, oh, everybody, I want to target everyone. Because sure, what I could be talking about could seem a little bit too broad. You never want to be too broad. So I think the value in then finding people in each different area of campus, in each different school, in each different ethnicity, religious, different types of backgrounds. Once you find those people and then know what they value and how we can then, as a student government, get them the right resources, talk to the right people. That's why we have different cabinets. That's why we have academic affairs, environmental affairs, social advocacy, et cetera, et cetera. Finding basically what people value themselves then will help us out in fixing the problems that people are searching for.
Yeah, great. And then Blake, if you could talk a little bit about what you kind of want to see from participants in terms of a budget and how they're going to be using the funding.
Yeah, money. Every idea requires some kind of funding. And so for us, we're not asking for, some of our programs require like an Excel spreadsheet. And I just saw and responded to a question in the chat about submitting JPEGs or PDFs. For this application, we're not requiring a detailed budget breakdown for your idea. However, it's important when you're developing an idea that you have a sense of the cost connected to an idea. So if you're saying we're going to host an event and we want to provide some kind of access to either materials, maker materials. Let's say you want to create something where people could pick up a packet of materials and then take it back to their dorms and make something together and all share it as like a new tradition, right? All of those materials have costs to them. And so what we're asking you to do is think about, depending on what you're submitting, like what are the things you need to purchase and spend money on, and how much do you think that it's going to cost in total? Because the seed grants available are $500, which for some ideas that may cover the entirety and even more of what they're thinking about. For others, you may be thinking of something much bigger. And so if it's more than $500, we're going to ask, well, how are you going to supplement the $500 that we're giving you in order to meet the costs? It also, for us, is a way for you to think about the reality check. If I've designed an event that costs $2,000, are there ways to scale that down, maybe remove some pieces of it in order to make it more manageable from a cost structure in order to fit those guidelines? So we're not asking for a breakdown of every single purchase, but in general, like how much do you anticipate spending on materials? How much do you anticipate spending on X, Y, and Z? And since most of this will all be virtual, there may be fewer costs associated than if we were doing this in person. So you don't need to spend the full $500, but if there are costs associated with your idea, we want you to at least demonstrate that you've thought through those ideas and understand the buckets of funding you need.
Yeah, great. And then could you also give us an example of what you mean by future steps and what those steps could look like and should look like?
Yeah, so we do not expect you to have your idea ready to roll out on August 16th. We fully anticipate there's going to be kinks and things you're going to learn as you, especially if you're planning on doing something once you get to Boston and you're not there yet, it's going to change when you arrive. So I would expect to see something of, in 2 weeks, our team is going to meet consistently and we're going to schedule a conversation with dining services if your event requires some kind of catering or something, right? You don't need to have all of those details mapped out, but you need to know what additional steps your team has to take in order to make your idea happen. If you're designing an app and you haven't had the time to make the whole app, then I want to know that like you've given yourself until the end of September to create a wireframe. I don't know what your deliverables and your milestones are, but I want you to be specific and thoughtful and realistic in what it's going to take in order for you to get this idea off the ground. That idea doesn't have to happen in September. It could happen later in the semester, as long as you've given us realistic milestones that you need to achieve.
Great. And then Danielle, how would you answer the last question of kind of why is your team the right team to do this idea?
For my team, I talked a little bit about this in my other answer. My team is comprised of 8 people from so many different backgrounds, and whenever we have to do pitches for funding or just in general, we have to tell people about our team and our product. It always comes back to this is the team to solve the problem because we come from so many different fields. We have so many different perspectives, and I think it's just important to, I'm just sorry, I'm trying to find the way to say this. It's important to have your special skills, but it's also important to have that flexibility to wear different hats and just learn as you go. I think no one expects you, especially in this part of the application, no one expects you to have everything completely ironed out. And just the reality is things change. Like, I come from a communications background. I've done marketing, public relations, journalism, but in the venture, I find myself doing stuff like on the tech side. I've definitely talked to lawyers about financial elements of our venture. Like, don't get stuck to your role, I think, is what's important. And when you're presenting and you're talking about your team and your product and why your team is specific for it, just, I think, stress that you're just willing to learn, I would say, too, is just, why would someone want to bet on you? And then you just have to, I know that sounds really kind of passe and cheesy, but just people want to invest in you, and you just got to show them you're willing to learn and you're serious, and you just come from a well-rounded group and you've done your research, and this is a team. I think that comes from a confidence in your team and your product. And yeah.
I'd also add that you may not feel like you have the full team yet. And so one of your milestones could be, we don't have anyone from marketing on our team yet. We know that's a skill that's missing. One of our goals is in the first few weeks to reach out to folks at the PR lab or make connections with folks over at COM to add that to our team. Again, if there's something that's missing from your team, rather than shy away from it, call it out and say, we recognize this and we have a plan to address it, and here it is. So if there's a key skill on your team that's missing that is fundamental to getting your idea off the ground successfully, address it front on and tell us you have a plan for it rather than shy away from it.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a general rule when you're doing an application. Like, if you have a blind spot, don't try and weasel your way around it. Just admit it and move on with it. Move on with the application.
Libby, I got a couple of just more quick little plugs, maybe to add to some of the previous answers. I think for the first question, write your description and explain why it's unique and novel. A lot of ideas are very similar, but maybe you're changing something slightly, or you're opening it up to a new audience, or you're trying it on a new platform. Figure out what makes you different than other solutions that exist, and emphasize that, because that also shows us that you've done your homework, that you know what other solutions exist, or you know resources that are available, and you're going to tell us how you're either different or you're going to leverage those resources. And then I think to the question about desirable and equitable, to Danielle's point, tell us how many people you've talked to. Emphasize if you've had conversations with people outside of your team or with other staff and faculty at BU. This is your time to brag about those conversations and what you've learned. And so make sure we understand that this isn't just something that you've only thought about in your head, but that you have shared this and you've heard from other people that they think this is a good idea and an idea worth moving forward.
All right. So do you think you can move to the next slide, Blake?
Yes, I can.
All right, so now we're going to go a little more broadly and talk about just applications in general. So if anyone wants to take this, but what do you think are the most important things, or just check items on a checklist when you are submitting an application?
I would say like really driving home your main points. And I think this also goes with the word count as well, making sure that it's clear what your main idea is. And if there's details that can be omitted, and that it might support what you have to say, but it's not really going to be a make or break point. If you're really hitting that word count, don't omit it and talk about it later, and just make sure you're driving home your real point. And really just has to do with grammar. Danielle and I were in the same class this past semester, CM 331. You want to use as little words as possible. Don't be using you can say something in one word and instead of 3 words, do it. Small things like that really make a difference, and it makes it clear that you're not just trying to use big fancy words to seem like you know what you're talking about. Like was mentioned earlier, if you don't know, just say I don't know. That's a lot more impressive to admit to that than to get your way around it, because it's the beginning of, it's the new normal challenge. It's like we're trying to figure everything out too. We're asking students help to figure out how we can have a new normal. No one knows all the answers, so if you don't have one answer, don't dance around it. Just flat out say it, I think is really important.
So off of that, like when you're trying to fit into a word count, do you Blake have any suggestions, since this is a pretty condensed application, since it's often like 500 characters, so that is kind of daunting to fit your idea into that short space?
Yeah, I would also add, we've put the application questions both in this presentation, in today's event guide, and you can go into the application and copy. You should always do this. You should always know what the full application is before sitting down to submit it, especially if you're waiting until 11:50 at night, the night before it's due. And I would always recommend drafting your answers out in a Google Doc, in a Word document, where you can spell check, where you, to Kat's point, you can catch those grammatical errors. You can see how redundant your answers are and what's similar between them, and what can you put in one answer that you don't have to then address in a second question. And hopefully you're doing this with a team, so make sure that everyone feels represented, their voices are included, that you're editing, you're sharing it with people that know nothing about your idea and asking, like, does this make sense? Is this clear? Because it might sound perfect to you, but to someone who's reading it for the very first time, it may not be as succinct as you would think. As far as the word count goes, we are anticipating dozens and dozens and dozens of submissions. And so part of a word count is really to help evaluators be able to review and assess submissions in a timely manner. So the word count is as much for you to be succinct as it is for our evaluators to be able to go through your application and get the big ideas and be able to think, are you a good fit or not for the competition? So, you know, to do a word count, right, that's why you draft it, you count your words as you're going along, and you continue to trim and simplify your sentences while still making sure you have the heart of what it is you're trying to communicate in your answer. You don't need to give me all of the details, all of the things you've done, right? If I can think about them as summaries, if I can get an overview of what you've accomplished and what you've thought through at a high level, that's the goal of the application.
Right. And Danielle, when you were applying to the innovation pathway, that was kind of a similar form style. What kind of advice would you give to people now trying to fill out the new normal challenge form?
What a good question. I think, okay, I'm going to highlight this Blake's point. Just draft it somewhere else. I know that's so simple and it's so easy, but like when going through it, it's like the draft, I wrote it and I was like, oh, this is gold. This is awesome. And then I took a break. I came back to it like 3 hours later and I'm like, oh, no. This is, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is probably the like initial contact anyone else will ever see of your idea. You just have to make sure it's represented well. So draft it. And I think the important part was that I had a co-founder. So I started it and then she like refined it. And then we went back and forth. It probably went through a review process about like 4 different times. And then we're like, okay, is it ready? Okay. And then we sent it to other people and then we sent it back. So I think that's really important. I mean, I know ideas are sometimes like, it's hard because I know there's a lot of unknown sometimes. Like, oh, is anyone going to like this idea? X, Y, and Z. But I just think the best thing you can do is just review it, be confident in your idea, and just submit it. Make sure you've just done your research and it'll fall into place.
Going off of that too, I think that it is, I'm evaluating the applications, I think all of us here are. Something that I would notice is like, if it's thrown together last minute an 11:50 p.m. application, this is real money that Innovate is going to be giving to students. I would be much more confident and looking at somebody's application and greenlighting it if it's clear that there's been time and effort put into it and it's not like sloppy or anything, because I want to help out somebody who clearly is passionate about this rather than someone who is like oh, something else to add to a resume, or maybe I'll be interested in this. Like seeing a passion and an idea, I think is so much more important than just like someone who might have planned at the last minute. And so really, if you do care about this, if you do want this, like definitely attending these sessions too. Like there's people that I've talked to already and had such great conversations with. Even if the opposite happens, like you're here, you're showing your effort into it, you're showing that you really care about this, that matters.
Yeah. All right. So Blake, wrapping up, what exactly do you look for in applications when you're going to be looking at these?
Yeah, I think the points that Danielle and Kat hit on, right? Be succinct, make sure that you've reviewed it. We can tell when something is submitted last minute. We can read the passion behind the ideas. So that all comes through in an application. For these types of applications, what we do is when the application closes, we take all the submissions and we blind them, which means we're going to remove your names. And we're going to remove your emails. We're even going to remove the time you submitted it. So no one's going to know if you submitted it, at 11:55, but hopefully that wasn't the first draft. What people are going to see, we're going to then number it. So you're no longer going to have your name attached to it, but it's going to have a number. And that's what our evaluators are going to see. And then they're going to see all your written submissions. And hopefully at least 2 different evaluators will be reviewing and scoring your submission. And then we'll be averaging the scores to help us determine those top 10 scores. So all of the questions in today's presentation are on the rubric, which is linked on our website. Judges will be scoring on a 1 to 5 scale, 5 being the higher score. And so everyone who submits an application will, about a week later, receive their scores, feedback from the judges, and their status, whether you've been selected as a top winner or if there's other programming and support we'd recommend you do in order to develop your idea, but you don't get the SEEK grant. And so all of that will be communicated to teams following their submissions, probably about a week after everything comes in.
Great. Could you go to the breakout room discussion slide? One more.
One more?
Yes. All right, so as you probably saw when you entered the event, the tables on the right side, before the sponsor tables, are labeled with Danielle, Kat, and Blake's names. We are going to be running 3 10-minute breakout sessions, and there may be more than just you and one of our speakers at a table, but you will be able to at least spend some time at each of their tables. So please go where there's spread out as much as possible. But we recommend that you start the session by just going over and doing a quick elevator pitch. This elevator pitch is going to help you kind of get a handle on your idea and how exactly you can say it in a concise manner, because that can be quite a problem with applications. So just keep practicing that every time you go to a new table. And if you have questions or are stuck, I will be at the Innovate BU table if you need anything. All right.
So I'm going to end the presentation, and we're going to go back to the networking for a couple of rounds, and then also try and do a timer so that you'll see how much time is left in each session.
All right, thank you so much, everyone, for participating. And we want to give a special thank you to our 3 speakers, Danielle, Blake, and Kat. We greatly appreciated having your expertise, and I hope you all enjoyed your discussions.
I am sharing my screen. I lost my arrow for a minute. Okay. There they go. Thank you, Danielle and Kat, for your feedback. Libby, you've done a great job today.
All right, so just some final reminders. This was our last workshop. However, if you would like to schedule office hours with me, I believe that should be on the challenge website. Yeah, and also feel free to email me at sibuild@bu.edu. And remember that the deadline is this Saturday at midnight. This is Eastern time on the 15th. Blake will be putting the connections contact sheet in the chat. And remember to join the Innovate BU Slack channel if you need to send out a survey or anything. That is a great place to get student feedback. Yeah, all right. So thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, and as Libby mentioned, I just put the contact sheet into the chat box for you, and I also wanted to just share what that sheet looks like. So a number of you have added yourselves to this doc as students with your contact information and what kinds of ideas you're looking for, and if you're looking for a team member. I would also highly recommend you take a look at the second tab, which includes contact information for faculty and staff who are excited to talk with you about your ideas. A few of you, I mentioned Dean B, who was part of our panel last week. He's part of the Student Activities Office. If you're interested in understanding clubs, the REMO platform, how they're adapting events and programs for student groups, please reach out to Dean B and see if you can set up a time to talk with him. And if not, if you can't do that before the application is due, at least mention that you're trying to reach out to that office or any of these departments, that you're continuing to connect with more people and to learn more and to leverage resources that exist on campus. We have faculty and staff here from across the campus. If you're working on a wellness idea, Mia is a great person to reach out to. If you're wanting to make sure you're doing an idea that is equitable and inclusive or is connected to anti-racism or social justice work, Alana at the BU Diversity and Inclusion Office is excited to talk with you. If you're an artist and thinking about something really creative, Wendy is excited to chat with you. If you're trying to figure out how do I create a team that's going to be long-term or a business idea, Hutch, right? So all of these folks, we've got sustainability, people from across the campus with different areas of expertise, ready and willing to hear your ideas and to give you feedback. All you've got to do is reach out to them. And hopefully if they have bandwidth, they can get back to you quickly. And if not, keep following up with them after the application deadline. The last thing I'd point out is our website. So Libby mentioned her email address, and she'll be sending a follow-up email to you. Follow up with her if you have questions. I would also just point out that if you've got questions about the competition, all of that is on our website. Details about the 2 tracks, links to submit the applications, reminder about the categories and what is and isn't eligible. Timeline and deadlines. Here you can see all of the videos and slides from the workshops connected to the New Normal Challenge. So if you want to go back and review any of this as you develop your application, take advantage of these tools and resources. They're here, and today's will be added to the website probably by early tomorrow. And then again, a reminder about the submission docs. It is midnight Eastern time, so make sure you get that in. And then an overview of when you should hear back, the week of August 24th to the 28th. And I'd also plug, we finalized the deadline, the date for when we're going to do a big showcase event. We'll include that in the follow-up email, but it will be September 23rd. And if you're not sure of next steps, you've got the contact sheet here, the Slack channel, brainstorming notes, resources here. If you're not sure if your idea fits the City of Boston, the state and federal health guidelines, we have linked their websites here. And that should be the most up-to-date source for you to leverage as you're double-checking your resources. And then if you have any specific questions about either of the tracks, we've got some of those frequently asked questions here on our website. But again, emailing Libby, if you've got any questions, here's her email address, sibuild@bu.edu. She's here to help. We all are. So let us know what you need. Okay? And with that, I'm going to end the presentation. Thank you all to our panelists, to our attendees today. We've got about 7 or 8 more minutes on the platform, and we'll stick around. So if you've got any last-minute questions before the event ends at 2:30, we'll do our best to answer them. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and I can't wait to see your applications.